I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We got the last minutes here. Does anybody want to make a motion on the minutes?
Move to get accepted as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor? One thing done. The first thing I'm going to do is go over the school budget. And a couple of things I did email Emily a couple of questions. I hadn't thought of anything I'd like to ask her. The septic system, as I remember, was tested 2 years ago, and she said that ours and others still fine. They put a camera in it 2 years ago and looked around, so it was good. Asked her about the roof, and last summer they contacted the company who's been maintaining the roof, and they said it's good for another year. So the plan now is to put it out to bid next fall, or the following summer sometime, next year's budget. And to do it all at once, to save setup and break down to any stage of whatever they need, equipment to lug down here. But it's about $396,000 to do the three sections of roof. So we'll check out funding that somehow through the investment fund is the plan next fall. The investment fund now is, I think, around $380,000 in it. Around 70 of that is committed to paying for the rest of the reval, so we're down to say $600,000. $400,000 for the school next year. But by that time, hopefully, we've added another $100,000 to that, at $50,000 a year into the town warrant, town meeting. So maybe we can use some of this money to give us some thought before now on Thursday to put towards roads to help keep the tax down. And I also have asked Christine to get the exact number of surplus we have. Not anticipated surplus in the year surplus, but actual surplus we have on hand for a definite number. As well as what it might cost if we borrowed some of that money, say $200,000 or $300,000 for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, and see if that might be another way to do it. But I'm hoping we can convince the town, if it comes to that, to borrow or take some money from that investment fund to help keep the taxes down. But give us some thought before Thursday, and Christine shoot up some more information for us come Thursday. As far as the county tax goes, it looks like that's going to be an increase of around $70,000 to the town of West Bath. 4 or 5% increase for us or something like that. Well, that's all I got. Any more thoughts or ideas on the school budget? What do you think of that?
I think they did a pretty good job of squeezing every dollar out of that thing. I mean, a lot of their, and that would be a good statistic to have, how much of it is out of their control.
I think she said that this year's budget of the increase, which is going to cost us roughly $1 per thousand valuation, she said it was 68%.
She said 68% of the increase, but I was wondering what the percentage of it.
It's probably at least 75%.
Right, and that would be an interesting statistic to be able to have at the meeting, I think, if people start complaining about it.
And it's the first time in a number of years they've gone up. Even through COVID, they kept it down to a very low increase. And this basically is all tuition. The state increased what they can raise tuition-wise, as well as religious schools, and now we pay for that tuition, so that's all adds up.
I do have a question. I saw in the paper that the state found $42 million. Zero.
I checked with Emily today.
That doesn't.
We're a minimum receiver. We get nothing from the state because we're a rich coastal town.
Is that right?
Yes.
Oh.
We'll explain that sometime to you. But I did check with Emily and said, I know the answer, but did we receive any more of this $42 million, whatever? She said 0.
Well, that answers that.
Yeah, that's what I said. I knew that was the answer, but I thought I'd ask anyhow, in case I was pleasantly surprised. Any other thoughts on it?
There's no woman there.
No.
Yeah, not really. I mean, the only thing I saw was the 5th day of the position they got funded through COVID, but, I mean, at this point, it's such a small figure, to have somebody there 5 days is probably worth it.
I think, as she said, a lot of them there, the staff, and even a part-time, 2 or 3 days a week, are filling the rest of the days with special needs kids, so they're well busy doing that.
What kind of questions will come up at the budget meeting when people hear?
At town meeting,
Yeah.
hard to say, on the school budget, maybe not much at all. It might be this year because it's a big increase, but generally speaking, not much at all.
What year do we?
I think this is the 9th year or something.
Commitment, or the 10-year, is it, so next school year,
I think Keith Hines says he's been on 9 years, or going on 9 years.
next fall?
Yeah, it's getting
This
close.
is his 9th year.
This is the 9th year?
That's what
That's his
it is
9th
the
year.
So it must be the 9th year.
What does that mean?
Because when it
Sorry.
first, no, when it first started, we left our issue 1. You have to sign a 10-year agreement
See.
for your secondary kids to have a school,
I see,
guaranteed.
I see.
So it's a 10-year in that. We're in 9 years of that now, I believe, according to Keith, because he was there the first
So
year.
that we're in the 9th year,
I believe so.
so next year, so.
They start negotiating probably sometime in the fall or whatever.
But if the tuition's gone up, the tuition's gone up.
No matter where you go,
Changing systems
No.
isn't gonna help that.
probably not.
Well, religious schools are half the price though. If they are. Silo or St. John's, and they wouldn't pay for it, and it was half the cost.
Well, we have to pay for it now.
Yeah, but it's half, it's half of what it would go to, say, Brunswick.
Oh,
I don't know.
if I were running a religious school, I wouldn't, if I got the opportunity to take state money, I'd take the state.
They can't overbill though.
No, they can charge going rates. I don't know what the rates are. But that
you know.
just adds to the cost of tuition, because
Right.
there's several students going to different former religious schools, whatever. Any more comments on the school? Do we have a motion?
I move we accept the school budget as presented to us. The questions that David asked.
Is there a second?
I'll second
All those in favor? All right, I'll email Emily, tell me, agreed, they're in a tough spot that way.
Wouldn't mind dumping a little extra money in there.
We get double the rest of the money everywhere. And it's, in my mind, a realistic budget.
Yeah.
Let's see, mention the roof, no state funds. You think you get the surplus number?
I think so.
Do you, the numbers are here?
No, I want the actual surplus, not anticipated, but actual surplus.
Well, this is what we have, this is what Julie will
As of
provide.
March 31st.
If you want a different number, we're gonna have to call Brewer and see if he can come up with a different number.
I just want a number, that I haven't seen this yet to go over it. I just want a number that maybe right now surplus number, not what anticipated with funds that aren't spent this year, or excise tax coming in, or anything else, just what the number is now.
Okay, we'll see what we can do.
And this is, I think this includes this current budget numbers, right? This $2,263,000. That must include what we have in the budget to spend the rest of this year.
Right.
And I want to see if we can break it out with just unexpended funds, I guess, as of last June, basically.
It's difficult working without an audit.
Yeah, the best you can do then, the best you can do. As well as what the interest rate is, would be on, borrowing $200,000 or whatever.
Right, Julie's working on that. Her contact at Androscoggin just moved on, so she's working with somebody new.
Okay, Seeing the cemetery trust fund, anything new on that?
No, I still have to find adequate paperwork for Sally to move along on that.
In the AR, the ARP funds up there, 89,005.
That's
Some of
not
that's committed, right?
right, we have about 32,000 that's unappropriated.
Can you, between now and Thursday, think of some ways that that funds can be spent? Justify any of those funds being spent on anything maybe going on now, that fits the requirements?
We have them allocated to windows, we're waiting to see if there's a grant.
We,
Well, I've been working on that, and we're gonna have to move forward with the projects because there's nothing that fits.
So then there's no money.
all we're getting
No, I've
is rebates.
exhausted all of the possible.
Yeah, if you can think of ways in this current budget, we could spend that 32.
I'd like to reserve some of it in case the heat pumps or the windows go over what we
Agreed.
anticipated.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can talk about that.
Does that money expire at any time?
2 years.
Yeah, takes a few years before we need to expend all of it.
And we received 50,000 from, I guess you might say the RSU1 settlement on intersection, was it? Changes to intersection, they gave us a refund on that?
Right, it was the escrow that they held in case there were transportation changes around the Congress Street area.
So we got about 50,000 back from that. We've started receiving rental from the solar farm,
Yes,
proposed solar farm,
12,000 a year
12,000 a year.
during this stage of development,
And that will increase somewhat when the farm, if and when the farm's built.
yes.
Any other pots of money?
Always looking for pots of money.
Yes, I can.
Is
Even-
the money
even
that's
small
to
plots.
buy a lottery ticket for the town every
I think it'd be sweet, huh?
Well, that's all I've got. Just,
Well, and that 679 I do, the revale hasn't come out of that yet either.
right, that's why I say we're about 600,000.
I got a question. I was hoping we could talk about tonight if it's
Sure.
appropriate. And I'm gonna try to stay in the wheelhouse of the finance committee, or budget advisory.
Well, that's good, because that's where you are.
But it's gonna, I guess it's gonna take me a minute to make my point, so bear with me, but I wanna talk about roads for a minute and how this all plays out. So, it's my understanding the town has, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but the town has, is it an ordinance that you can spend, or that you have to have an engineer at 5,000?
It's a purchasing policy.
Yeah, we don't have an ordinance.
Okay,
We
so
have
it's
a policy.
It's a policy that
It's
we're not
like,
abiding by, right?
Well-
Because it's not,
I think for the most part, we have been, except for, there's a 2-year period, if I'm correct here, that the board, the select board suspended the bid through the roads during all the COVID stuff going around. And then last fall, it was reinstated.
Yes, but what we were really talking about at the last meeting was that we have a bid, or a purchasing policy is what we call it right now, that's a bit dysfunctional when it comes to roads, and it has not been followed for a number of years.
right, that, let me move forward to my point, because that's really not where I wanted to go.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to explain
No,
what
no,
that
I
policy
get
is.
But, so I think there was a lot of talk about moving that, that number up for an engineer requirement, right? So instead of $5,000, it would be like 10 or 20 or whatever the case may be. And then there was talk about engineering, right? There were a lot of discussions about engineers and where they were gonna be and what role they were gonna play. And there's a road committee, right? that's meeting for the town? or
Well,
is that-
there's still a road committee, but it's been stalled.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at though is all this stuff's taking place, it all is gonna have an impact on the road budget. So how do I vote on a budget that may or may not have, include engineer fees versus regular versus?
There is a line for,
There's two
Engineer.
lines for
Engineer.
engineer.
But, right, but if it changes, if the criteria for, getting an engineer changes, then how many jobs does that impact? And what's that do to the budget?
well, for most jobs, you know, my personal opinion, if you're replacing a culvert for $4,000 or $5,000, or even $7,000 or $8,000, wherever it is, that should not be engineered. Ditching should not be engineered, things like that, minor repairs, even, you know, replacing a section of road, depending on where it is, does not need to be engineered. So I can't see that changing a lot in the long run.
And Steve is really focusing on Birch Point Road this
This
year,
year.
so it's really only one road that we're dealing with engineering at this stage that we're aware of.
So, I guess maybe a question I should ask then is the road committee an actual town committee that was
It
put
is.
together? And what's happening with that? Are they gonna, do they make a recommendation or?
Well, they
They're,
haven't made any formal recommendations to the select board.
their remit was to study the condition of the road and to make recommendations, suggestions. The road commissioner and the select board, it has final authority about any of the roads, about who gets to spend what.
We had a meeting that didn't complete, I guess is the best way to put it. And then we're trying to reschedule it, and some people were out of town. I think we're at the cusp when everyone's back in town to reschedule that, to talk about procedurally,
But it's,
when is a road budget, need an engineer, how many engineers, what levels of engineers, what criteria. We
but
started
that
that,
that should not affect this year's budget going forward. I mean, this is April now. That, this budget, as far as the roads go, as far as I'm concerned, will not change much between now and town meeting next month.
well, it'll affect the Birch Point if we have a engineer tier system.
Well, yeah, but engineering is in this budget,
Yeah, we have two
That's the budget.
allocations for
in this budget.
engineering.
And the biggest project is Birch Point.
And that absolutely needs engineering.
Oh, right, I'm not trying to get into the engineering debate.
Right, no, I.
I wanna make sure that I'm making the right decision
Now,
on
this
this
is-
budget and that I understand what I'm approving and what I'm not.
Shouldn't change,
This is our budget for this year.
yeah, shouldn't change anything. Any further policies would affect the next budget, not this one.
Unless we decide to vote up or down on some of these sections of the budget.
So. I don't wanna prolong this meeting.
No, it's.
But I wanna make sure I understand it. So the roads that are in this budget are coming out of, well, obviously coming out of this year's budget, they wouldn't be impacted at all. But if there were changes, it would be the next year's budget. How much, I mean, would it be something we should look at for this budget? Does it make sense? I mean,
I don't think so. Because the last major road to repair is the Birch Point. That's in the worst shape.
It's only
So-
gonna fall into the sea if we have a big surge.
But I think we need
So going forward,
process for it though.
Well-
yeah, but then this budget,
But it affects the pricing on it, in theory it could.
what should affect the pricing?
If we decide to have tiered, more engineering
But that will affect-
evaluation.
That won't affect this budget. This is gonna be voted on in a month.
right, I guess that's my question is, if the road committee was to make a recommendation, it's probably not gonna be within this month then?
No, it won't be.
Why aren't we having a meeting in this month?
Well,
It's in the select board's hands. It probably should be brought up Thursday.
But anyhow, as far as I'm concerned, this is our budget. And we vote on this budget, that's what we vote on. If someone throws a monkey wrench so-called later on, that's not our budget we voted on.
Right, I guess, and the last question I'll ask, I guess, is if, I mean, if there is a road committee that's looking at the way we're doing roads, you know, does it make sense to prioritize and, well, I guess it's pretty much only the Birch Point Road, right?
As far as any major repairs.
Yeah, okay, so we're not, it's not like we could prioritize and put some aside for a year to wait,
No,
because
it needs to be done.
it's kind of well, no, not Birch Point Road, but anything else, because it probably doesn't matter, because there's not enough.
No, yeah,
Is
it's- that's the bulk of the money is going to Birch Point,
that-
if the town meeting agrees to it.
Okay.
But for sure, if you got some other questions or whatever, Thursday night, bring them up, Jeff.
Yeah, let me think on it. I think you explained it. I just didn't know where everything stood, and I don't know if I can, you know, get behind a budget that seems like it's mid-process.
Well, this is not, as far as I'm concerned, this is, Road Commissioner Stevens said that, you know, Bruce Point's his main road.
Yeah, so the road, I guess that answers my question, is the road committee is basically, the work they do will be impacting maybe next year's budget, maybe
Yeah.
not.
Maybe not, but this is already April, we got a month to go to town meeting. I can't see too much changing in the next few weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? All right, is a motion to adjourn.
That's a quick meeting.
That was. I'll do it.
Second? All right, we are adjourned. And Thursday night,
That was efficient, David.
7 o'clock Thursday.
Yes.